If you've been sleeping badly for months or even years, I want you to know something very important. In many cases, it's because you believe things about sleep that are simply not true. And those beliefs are driving behaviors and emotions that are actively keeping you awake. In this video, I'm going to share what each one of them are and break them down one by one so you can have a better chance of sleeping tonight. My name is Ashwin Whitelaw. I'm an insomnia specialist with nearly a decade of clinical experience and co-author of research published in the Oxford Academic Sleep, the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine, and the Journal of Sleep Research. By now, you've probably read half the articles on the internet about how to sleep better. Today, I want to dismantle 5 of the most common sleep myths that I hear from my clients early on. Because once you understand how your sleep system actually works, everything starts to make a lot more sense. Myth 1 is I need 8 hours of sleep every night. This one is everywhere. You've heard it your whole life. 8 hours, that's the target, that's the standard. If you're not hitting 8 hours, something is wrong. Here's the truth. 8 hours is a population average, not a prescription. Sleep researchers have known for decades that sleep need varies significantly from person to person. For some people, that number is 7 hours. For others, it's 9. And yes, there are genuinely short sleepers, a real genetic subtype who function perfectly well on 6 hours or less without any measurable cognitive impairment. And if you're here, that's definitely not you. The problem with chasing 8 hours as a fixed target is this. If your body only needs 7 hours and you're spending 9 hours in bed believing that you need 8, you're gonna have more fragmented, lighter sleep, which is likely to create an anxiety around sleep over time. I do want to be clear. If you've historically been a 7-hour sleeper and you're suddenly only getting 5, that's not just a preference difference. That's a gap worth addressing. Context matters. But if you spend years feeling like a failure for not hitting 8 hours, let me give you some relief. You may simply be someone whose body runs on a little less. The real question isn't, did I get 8 hours? The real question is, do I feel restored? Am I functioning? Am I alert during the day without forcing it? If that's the case, then you're probably fine. If it's not, then watch on. Myth number 2 is sleeping in or going to bed earlier will help me catch up on lost sleep. This one is really important because so many people do this without realizing the longer term damage that it causes. You had a terrible night. You woke up multiple times, couldn't get back to sleep, finally dozed off around 5 a.m. and then drag yourself through the day like a zombie. So the next morning, you sleep in. Or the next evening, you go to bed earlier, trying to get ahead of it. Both of these feel intuitive, but for someone with frequent insomnia, both of them make things worse. Here's why. Your sleep system runs on 2 main processes. The first is your circadian rhythm, the body's internal 24-hour clock that regulates when you feel awake and when you feel sleepy. The second is something called sleep pressure, a chemical called adenosine that builds up in your brain the longer that you're awake, making you progressively sleepier throughout the day. These 2 systems work together to make you fall asleep at a predictable time each night. When you sleep in after a bad night, you reduce the sleep pressure you need for the following night. You haven't fully rebuilt the chemical drive that makes you fall asleep easily. So that night, harder to fall asleep, more fragmented sleep, and increased likelihood of another bad night. When you go to bed earlier than usual, the same problem plays out, but differently. You climb into bed before your circadian system has signaled that it's time to sleep. Your brain isn't ready, and here's where it gets dangerous. If you lie awake in bed, tossing and turning, you are conditioning your brain to associate the bed with wakefulness. That is one of the core mechanisms that turns occasional bad nights into chronic insomnia. The practical takeaway here is uncomfortable but important. After a bad night, get up at your normal time. Don't go to bed dramatically earlier. Keep your schedule consistent. I know that feels counterintuitive and it feels like you're punishing yourself, but you're actually protecting your sleep pressure and keeping your circadian rhythm calibrated for the upcoming nights. Consistency is one of the most powerful sleep tools that exists. It costs nothing, and it's almost always the last thing struggling sleepers are doing. If this is hitting close to home, if it's not just interesting, but actually describing your nights, I share videos like this regularly to help busy professionals sleep better. Everything is grounded in validated sleep science and explained in a way that you can actually use. If you don't want to miss what's coming next, feel free to subscribe. All right, let's keep going. Myth number 3 is the common belief that if I don't sleep well tonight, tomorrow's going to be a disaster. This one I hear constantly, and it's one of the most important things that I can say in this entire video. Let's look at what the research actually tells us about this. Studies on acute sleep loss, missing a night, or getting a few hours do show real effects. Nobody's disputing that. But here's what most people don't know. The body has a remarkable ability to compensate for a bad night. The stress response activates, the cortisol and adrenaline kick in, and most people, especially adults who are otherwise healthy, perform significantly better than they expect after a rough night. In fact, the fear of a bad night is likely to cause more impairment than the bad night itself. Anxiety about not sleeping activates your threat response, and the threat response is not compatible with sleep. It's specifically designed to keep you alert. This is what we call sleep-related catastrophizing, and is one of the most reliable drivers of chronic insomnia. The thought, I have to sleep or tomorrow is going to be ruined, turns sleeping into a high-stakes performance. The harder you try to sleep, the more alert that you become. So does this mean bad sleep doesn't matter? Not at all. One bad night, your body handles it. The problem, and this is where the shift happens, is when bad sleep becomes the pattern. When it's week after week, month after month. Long-term untreated insomnia is genuinely dangerous. Not in a scary headline way, but in a quiet, accumulating, and deeply impactful way. Increased risk of cardiovascular disease, immune dysfunction, significant cognitive decline, increases in depression and anxiety, reduced pain tolerance, and hormonal disruption are all linked to prolonged poor sleep. The science here is not ambiguous. Chronic sleep deprivation is not something to manage indefinitely. It is something to treat as soon as possible. But the key word is chronic. One bad night is not an emergency. Myth number 4 is that naps are bad for your sleep. The conventional wisdom says, if you have insomnia, do not nap. Ever. Napping is the enemy. And like most oversimplified advice, there's a kernel of truth buried in there, surrounded by a lot of nuance that gets ignored. Here's how naps actually work. Every hour you spend awake, your brain accumulates adenosine, that sleep pressure chemical that I mentioned earlier. By the time evening rolls around, you should have built up enough sleep pressure to fall asleep and stay asleep through the night. A long nap in the afternoon essentially does a mini reset on that process. You discharge a significant amount of sleep pressure. Less pressure going into the night means harder to fall asleep, lighter sleep, and more awakenings. That's the real reason naps can be a problem for insomniacs. Not because naps are inherently evil, but because the wrong nap time erodes your sleep drive. So what's the right nap? A short nap, 20 minutes or less, taken before 1 p.m. has a minimal impact on nocturnal sleep pressure. It provides a real boost in alertness, mood, and cognitive performance without meaningfully disrupting the sleep drive that you need for the evening. The problems start when naps go beyond 20 minutes. You enter deeper sleep stages, which is why you sometimes wake from a long nap feeling worse. A 60-minute nap at 3 p.m. is a very different thing from a 15-minute nap at 12 p.m. If you have insomnia and you feel the urge to nap, the guidance is not never nap, but the guidance is keep it short, keep it early, and don't make it a habit to compensate for poor sleep. Use it as a performance tool when you truly need it, not a coping mechanism. Myth number 5 is, if I'm waking up in the night, then something is wrong with me. This one is incredibly important, and almost nobody knows this. Most people believe that healthy sleep looks like this. You fall asleep and you stay asleep deeply through the whole entire night. You wake up feeling refreshed 8 hours later. Any waking in the night means that something might be broken. But that is not how sleep actually works. Not even close. Sleep is not a single continuous state. It has cycles, roughly 90 minutes long, that move through different stages. Light sleep, deep sleep, light sleep again, and then REM sleep. After REM sleep, at the end of each cycle, there's a partial natural wake up, a brief and often unconscious return toward wakefulness before the cycle repeats again. Healthy sleepers who report sleeping perfectly wake up between 4 and 6 times per night. They just don't remember it. The brain doesn't consolidate those moments into memory because they're so brief. Here's where insomnia often starts. You wake up at the end of a sleep cycle, totally normal. But instead of drifting back down, you become aware of it. You check the clock, you start calculating, you feel a spike of anxiety about the fact that you're awake. And that anxiety, that threat response, is exactly what keeps you conscious. The brain has now marked this waking as significant, and over time, it starts to anticipate it. This is called conditional arousal. It's a learned response as the brain has associated waking in the night with alertness, anxiety, and cognitive activation. After some time, it learns to run that script night after night. So what's normal and what's not? It's completely normal to wake up in the middle of the night multiple times. It's not normal, meaning it's a sign that something needs addressing, to stay awake for longer than 30 minutes after those awakenings, especially if you feel dread when you wake, and especially if your mind immediately activates and starts racing. That's not just bad luck. That's a pattern. It has a name, it has a mechanism, and it has a very effective treatment. The good news is that conditional arousal, this learned wakefulness, is one of the most trainable aspects of insomnia. The brain learned it, which means the brain can unlearn it. That's not a platitude, that's neuroscience. What I see in the clinic constantly is that people sit on their sleep problems for a long time, months, sometimes years. They tell themselves that it's not that bad, that it will pass, and that everyone struggles with sleep sometimes, and then they'll deal with it when things start to slow down at work. And I get it, life is busy. Sleep problems feel like one of those background issues that you just manage around. But I want to be honest with you about what the research says happens when insomnia goes untreated long term. It's not just tiredness. Cognitively, the fog gets thicker, the decision making gets slower, the problem solving skills that make you good at your job start to dull. The mental sharpness you built your career on starts to erode quietly in the background. Professionally, and this one people don't talk about, chronic poor sleep changes how you show up. In meetings, in negotiations, in conversations that matter. The person who used to run a room now tries to just get through the day. The longer this continues. Physically, your body is keeping score. Immune and cognitive function and metabolic health decrease, whilst cardiovascular risks increase. These aren't hypotheticals. They're documented outcomes of prolonged inadequate sleep. Now here's what I also know. This is fixable. Not with supplements, not with apps, not with a new bedtime routine you'll try for 2 weeks and then abandon. It's fixable with the right approach. One that addresses the actual mechanisms driving your insomnia, rebuilds your sleep system from the ground up, and gives you the skills to maintain it permanently. The people we work with, they don't just sleep better, they show up differently, sharper at work, more present at home, and more like themselves again, which is a feeling that can't be explained after having missed it for months or even years. That version of you is not gone. It's just being held back. If you've been watching this and thinking, okay, this is me, this has been me for a while, and I want to actually do something about it, there's a link in the description to take our short assessment. It takes about 2 minutes, and it'll help us understand what's actually driving your sleep issues and whether it would be a good fit to work together to get your sleep back. You don't have to keep managing around this. You can fix it. And if you're not quite there yet, totally fine. Keep learning from these videos each week. And if you're someone who wakes up at 3 a.m. consistently and you want to learn more about why and how you can deal with it, that lesson is on screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.